What's up, Jim? Good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you today?
Freaking doing well. You just look sleepy still.
No, yeah, no complaints. I just rubbed my eyes, sort of a little glazed over, but no, I'm doing good. Today was the kid's first day of school, so
Nice.
I had to get my oldest up at 6. He's got to get that habit going. He usually wakes himself up, but for this first week or so, I get up at 6 anyways, so I'll just get him up. And it was weird dropping the little one off at preschool for the first time, and yeah, a little sentimental, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
She's with her being the last one. It's weird to see that, but yeah, I mean things are going good. How about
Nice. Good. Yeah, I got it here. I was up about 6 this morning too, so machine was been running since I woke up. Came straight out here, started running frames because I ran those past couple days. So easy. Just already had material in, just warm up cycle and cycle start. So got that running. Went and got ready. Trying to work out a little bit more and lift some weights, and so I'm gonna probably end up doing that after this while the machine's running. But got up,
Nice.
got in the cold tank for a little while, and then showered, got ready, and then Hudson was getting up, walked him to school, came back, and so got a couple parts done already this morning. I mean, it's only 8 o'clock, but it's been running for a
Sick.
couple hours, so it's been a good,
That's the
productive,
best.
yeah, nice productive.
That's the
morning
best
so far.
feeling, man. Like,
Yeah.
I actually just ran out of parts in both machines. I was running jobs all day yesterday,
Mhm.
and then this morning I had a couple of stragglers, but both machines are ready to be set up on something new right now.
Nice.
And I was cutting backspacers for a job, and I can't find the jaws anywhere. So I'm like racking my brain. Did I like deck them off and move them for something else, or are they in a drawer somewhere? And I like don't want to use a new set of jaws. I want to use, it's something that I'm not doing that frequently. So I'm like, I only have one set of aluminum jaws. Actually, for the job I just finished, I just preheat treat machined like 80 of these blades, and I just finished the last one this morning. So now I'm going to take those jaws, since I was going to deck them off anyways, cut that backspacer shape in there, knock those out, and yeah, move on. Today is like a onesie twosie day for me. I have like a lot of like loose ends to take care of before I really start moving into stuff for the show. And now I have 19 days.
Shit.
Yeah.
Until the show, right?
I'm trying to wrap these things up and then transition the VF2 onto the minimal amount of max stuff that I have to do for September, and then get the super mini mill running on show stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of how I'm going to spend my day today, is just go around the shop, make a list of the things I need to do. Unfortunately, today, like, isn't a great day, right? Like, we're going to be recording for another 45 minutes or an hour. And then my wife had asked me, since this is our first, like, day completely kid-free, which is a weird feeling, but she's needing to get some new organization for the house for kids' clothes, and, we just need another dresser to redo the closet or whatever. And so she had asked me last week, like, hey, could we take an hour and a half and go run and take care of that? And, okay, sure. So we'll do that. And it's more one of those things. I want to make the list while I'm in the shop now, because I kind of said to her, I'll do whatever you want in the middle of the day, but I will be out in the shop tonight until this list is done. It's one of those type of things where I want none of the things that I have to do today to carry over to tomorrow. And I can pivot on those things, how the day is structured, but I will not go to sleep until these 6 things are finished today.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't usually like to operate that way. I kind of try to keep more strict hours, because like tonight, like Campbell has cross country practice. Clark's first swimming thing is tonight. So I know I'm going to be running around for those things, and it's sometimes easier if just like at 5:30 I'm just done for the day. I know that doesn't happen all the time, but in some circumstances, especially in show preparation times, it's more or less going to be any waking second that I have that's not, allocated to a specific task. I'm going to be out here trying to get something done. But yeah, so Monday should be a pretty eventful day. There'll be a lot of running around and stuff. How's your weather right now?
It's gonna be fucking hot, dude. Today's supposed to be 98. I think it's gonna be hot. Yeah, it's disgusting. So I was out here last night until about 10:30,
Uh-huh.
and the temp in the garage was 94. last night at like fucking 10:30 at night. It was
Dude.
way cooler. It was a lot cooler outside, but there's no insulation or anything in here in the garage. You know, the sun just beats on that, you know, that whole backside of the garage
You need a
all
damn
day. So
mini split or something.
definitely, I do.
Dude,
I mean,
insulation and a dang mini split.
yeah, that would be nice. Yeah,
I guess it's tough on a rental, you know what I mean? Like, how much do you really want to do? How long are you going to stay there? I know, like, over the last couple of years, you're like, oh, we want to buy a house, or we'll spend all of our house money on a machine. You know what I mean? It's like
exactly
you're like pivoting and like trying to set yourself up better for the future. But it's like, do you have to be realistic with yourself? It's like, we're probably going to be renting for another 3 years. What's my comfort worth out here? You know, $3,500 for a mini split and insulation for $2,000. For $5,000, you could be comfortable.
And I'd be way more productive too, because I would be fine. I'd be comfortable out here. Dude, some days it's just fucking disgusting out here. I'm like, dude, I just don't even want to be out there. I feel disgusting. I'm going inside.
Dude, that's I mean, I can't believe you're still that hot. Honestly, like Pennsylvania, we're like drifting into fall. It feels like yesterday it was like high 60s. Today it's high 71, 73, 69, 69, 75, 75. Like, you know, it's like we're making that transition, which is weird. Our summer was nothing. Like, I don't even think we broke 90 one time, which typically we have like 2 or 3 weeks at the end of July and the beginning of August where like it gets sweltering like that, humid and hot, but it just didn't happen this year, which I'm not complaining about. My power bill, I mean, like, I think my biggest electric bill for 2 air conditioners, pool pump, 2 machines, and like regular power usage like was $750, which was like, I think we talked about this last week, but you know, last year this time with my old phase converter and 1 machine and 2 air conditioning units, it was like $750 or $800 the 1 month. So we've had a down year, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, ours are on average about that much. It's every other month here.
Okay,
yeah,
so you're 375
roughly. Yeah, it's anywhere from like 650 to 850 or so every other month. Yeah.
Wow.
So it sucks. But
is that just because your price per your kilowatt hour is a lot higher, just because it's Southern California?
It's just expensive here, but we also have the AC running nonstop. The AC is always on in the house, and then the phase converter is always on, and the machine's always on. So
what do you keep your air conditioning at in the house?
We set it usually like 72 to 74. I prefer to have it lower than that and just keep it cold so it doesn't have to try and get cold throughout the day.
Yeah.
But it usually, the thermostat or the temperature on there really never shows anything below like 74 or 76. Rarely gets down to what it's actually set at. So it's literally just running all of the time. But I'm uncomfortable if I'm hotter than like 70. So just in general, I don't know. I just run so hot. It seems like it sucks. So
yet you're working in 95-degree heat every day.
Yeah, it sucks. I used to have an actual allergy to my sweat. I don't know if it was like a histamine reaction or what. So I was always taking antihistamines. But literally, if I would sweat, I'd break out in hives. And it comes and goes. I had it for like a couple years, then it went away for years, and then it came back for like a year. And thankfully, it's gone right now. But I don't know if it was something that I was eating or what, you know. So I try to cut out a lot of shit, and it seems to have gone away for the most part. So
that's pretty peculiar, dude.
It's fucking weird, dude. It's brutal. Like, I went to dermatologists, I went to allergists, all that. So they're like, yeah, we have no idea what this is. So, yeah, it was wild.
You got to move to like Antarctica or something, dude.
I'd be down.
Cold all the time.
Yep. Cool.
Well, sweet. So it sounds like you were pretty productive over the weekend. I know you sent me some pictures and video. You got off one of the Datum frames dialed in.
Yep.
Everything looks super clean. Impressive as always.
Thanks, man.
So how many did you get to run off over the weekend? What was the cycle time like for Op 1?
Cycle time for Op 1 right now, it'll probably show it. It's going to probably swap planes back and forth depending on who's talking. But yeah, so Op 1, this is starting, it's almost 300 thou thick. It's like 285. But I saw cut everything. This was I bought 5 sheets of, I'm going to turn this back up. I bought 5 sheets of 6 by 12 inch by 300 thou thick tie from Sakin. And I'm probably moving forward. I'm probably going to just buy this. I'm thinking right now from TMS and just have them saw cut or blanket out to this rectangle size, which makes it real easy. That way I don't have to spend all the time band sawing and doing all that. But so Saturday, I ended up pushing the truck out. I got these running, I think, on Thursday or Friday, but I didn't have a whole lot of time out here the end of the week. So pushed the truck out on Saturday, made some room in here. And then while I was out here kind of cleaning up, going through stuff, I just let the machine run. So it's a 51-minute cycle. to do all this. It's a decent amount of surfacing. I don't know if you're going to be able to, how well you're going to be able to see it, but I'm going to try and post some pictures of all this stuff probably today. I've taken a lot, but yeah, so it's all pocketed. There's engraving, logos in there. And so I have, I think 10 out of the 15 of the slab sides internals done. But I also cut the soft jaws and ran one of the outside second op. So I just need to dial in the surface in this kind of pocket in here. I had a really cool morph toolpath in there to where it was kind of fanning out, splaying out, and it was following these curves here. But the toolpath was really old, and for whatever reason, Fusion bricked that toolpath. I can't edit it. I can't reselect any geometry. Like I can't literally do anything with that toolpath. So all of this stuff I essentially had to just redo from scratch, even though I already had it all done from that little sandwich construction with the backspacer version that you have now. But everything else came out pretty cool. There's I don't know if you'll be able to see any of this stuff. I don't think it's going to focus on it, but anyways, I'll post some pictures of it. So I'm going to try and finish out all of the internals sides for op1 side of the slab frames today, and then get on the outsides. But I finished up all of the solid model stuff for the lock bar, the inset lock bar pocket. I've got a pretty cool detail in here. I don't know if I have it open. I might as well just open it up, but I have a detail inside of the lock side that's going to hold the lock bar in. So the pin on the backspacer side is going to handle all of the location. But I modeled in a little dovetail that I'm hoping this lock bar snaps into when it gets into the pocket. So we'll see if Fusion's going to open up right now. For whatever reason, my authentication on here craps out literally every time my computer goes to sleep. So I have to re-log into Fusion, which has to open up the browser and do all this shit. So it's kind of frustrating, but that'll take a minute. But of course, the window's blocking everything that we're doing right now.
That's how it always goes.
I got to try and drag it onto my second monitor here. So, yeah. So I
what
just did that.
what was the cycle time like for Op2?
Op2, I just kind of ran through it in bits and pieces. So I don't know what the total cycle time is, but I'm imagining it's probably going to be like a half hour. So I'm using a 1/4 inch to do a 3D adaptive to remove all the carrier and rough out all of the surfacing. And then it's going to do so I'm using a Z contour to do the two main angles on the top and the bottom. I can't see the screen at all because Fusion's blocking all of this stuff until I drag it out. Let's see here. There it goes. So it's doing a Z contour for these two main angles. And for whatever reason, it's milling across, and then it's back feeding at the same feed rate.
It's not
rapiding. So I got to mess with. I just got one done, just kind of proof of concept. But I got to really tune the toolpaths and stuff. Like I went super deep in all the internal stuff.
Z contouring is just like a Z level step down, profile step down. I don't know the Fusion's toolpath name, so I was questioning that Z contour.
It's basically like a Z level step down, pretty much. So it slices your model by whatever your maximum step down is.
Step depth is you're just leading in, leading out, retracting, rapiding, dropping down, leading in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a Z. I did an offset surface of this surface at 0, and then I extend all the surfaces out by a couple hundred thou, 200-300 thou. So I have a nice,
it gets off the
simple.
part.
Yep. So and then I use the actual model profile as my boundary, with an offset of whatever, at least the radius of the tool. So it'll lead in a little bit, but it's driving off of that surface that's much bigger. So you don't see any lead ins and outs like right at that intersection of the boundary, like the boundary of the part.
Dude, I always like extend surfaces at least, half the tool diameter, and at least extend off the radius off the edge. Like, because I mean, honestly, like soft jaws are pretty accurate, but even if they're off a couple of thousandths positionally, like, if you wrap around an edge when you're chamfering, like you'll see that witness in the profile, even if it's only a half a thousandths out of location, it's just easier to feed right off the edge of the part. And yeah, if the chamfer's a couple thousandths difference in size, nobody will notice, but you certainly are going to notice that knit line as it wraps. That's like one of those things, because I'm much more of a fan of like radii compared to chamfers, but like I absolutely despise trying to blend a radii around a wall, unless you're using a quarter rounding tool would be worse, but I mean on this 3D stuff that doesn't really work that well. So I almost always like only radius, cut radii around edges if I'm also cutting the wall,
Yeah, you almost have
because
to,
I just
unless you're
don't want,
probing a bunch of
or
stuff.
technically I guess you could undercut, the profile by a couple of thousandths and then let it kind of blend off that way. But then trying to compensate in your jaws for being undersized is just like, yeah, not a fan. Turn super clean though. That's a time commitment to those frames. I mean, obviously they're the focal point of the knife. I guess technically if you're eliminating the need to machine a backspacer, even though in jaws the cycle time for 2 operations is probably sub 10 minutes depending on how complicated the backspacer is, you're still looking at 2 hours and 45 minutes per set of frames for op 1, op 2, and the backspacer, which, I mean, that's a time commitment, man. Like, obviously
Yeah,
you're
it's
taking
a
the
lot.
time to be as intricate as you can, and like, again, that makes the knife. I'm always thinking now, from like a Mac perspective, like a production style, how much I would charge a customer. Your hourly rate being where you are, your cost of living is even, I think, like 50% more than mine is. But like, if you were to do that job for somebody else, like shit, you'd be charging them $500-600 just for the machining on the set of frames. You know what I mean? And so it's crazy what we can justify doing for ourselves when there's more meat on the bone versus if you're just doing a job shop style job for somebody else. Like, it's kind of nice that you're able to deep dive and take the time on something that you're going to be, receiving the maximum benefit for on the other side of the sale versus like just manufacturing for somebody else.
Yeah, totally. I actually had a guy hit me up, a couple guys over the past week or 2 weeks that hit me up about doing some kind of production stuff for them, and kind of mid tech, maxed out stuff. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, I would much rather, because one guy was like, "Oh, I need like 100 sets of parts made," and I'm like, I would rather just make 100 of these, and then be in a much better position financially. If I'm going to be spending my
Dude,
time and then I don't have to reinvent the wheel, making all the work holding and doing all that shit again. It's like most of this stuff
don't
is
do
already
it.
dialed. I don't want to do that stuff anymore. Uh, I am totally down to do some classes and stuff. I actually did that one last week right after we jumped off
How'd that
on
go?
Wednesday. It went really well. The guy was super cool. The blade design that he had was pretty cool, and it was real easy to model. So we just basically went through kind of a one-on-one in the same in Riverside on here, and I just sent him a link, and he jumped on. I did some screen sharing. We went through his whole model and showed him how I draw and model all the primaries. It was a flat grind, so it made it real easy. Uh, but we did all of the kind of parametric modeling for doing the primaries, and then we jumped into cam and put some toolpaths on it. And
Nice.
he sounds like he has like a really good background in CAD, just engineering in general. So he picked everything up that I was talking about really easy. Um, so I think he's going to take off with it. It sounds pretty cool. So
Nice,
yeah, that
man.
went
Yeah,
really well.
it's interesting, the proposition, right? Like, job shop style machining with the Mac stuff made sense for me when I first started, um, working for myself, because it was almost like an extension of what we were doing anyways at our day jobs, right? We just show up
Totally.
here, cut parts for other people. Unfortunately, like, if those people are purchasing from you consistently and paying you consistently, it becomes kind of difficult to integrate your own work into that workflow, even though you probably make twice as much for your effort. Um, Now, one of the things that's different for me is because I still do a bunch of hand processing. Like, obviously, I'm still hand grinding blades, I'm still hand fitting locks, I'm still hand drilling detents. And so, like in your instance, when you're automating everything except for applying finishes and sharpening, like, it's a no brainer to run your crap until you can't make money off it any longer. There's like literally no reason, unless you're so bored with making your own product that like you need a change of pace. But like, I don't foresee that happening for quite a while, and by then you're so creative that like you'll be purveying a different product, like I'm sure you have a million product ideas. It's just a matter of like having the accessibility to do it, and the time. But especially if you only have with one machine, that was one thing that was different for me. Once I got the second machine and I could do production in one and my own stuff in the other, like, and meet deadlines that I needed to meet, that was a game changer. When you have one spindle and you're trying to decide what to dedicate it to, like, that becomes a conundrum, and I think you're probably right to stave off working with other people because, like you said too, these people, most guys are not financially capable to like purchase 100 knives worth of components at one time. They want them in smaller drops, you know? And then like the problem I've been having is guys get behind on the work, you know, because they're making customs or their kids are on summer vacation or whatever. And then by the time they're, you know, they pay you for 1 month's batch when you're finishing the next month's batch, they may not have even started the last one's. So now you're getting yourself into like, you know, you'll feel a little bit guilty, right? Which is like, oh man, I know haven't made any money on those last ones, but like I'm done with these and like I need paid. And it's like a tough place to be in. And sometimes I find myself like, is this really the path I want to take? Does this make me feel good? Does it make me feel fulfilled? Or would working on my own stuff make me feel more fulfilled? You know, and the other side of that is like, the more stuff of your own that you make, the more prepared you have to be to handle warranty issues and customer service problems and questions. Like when you're only making parts, you're only accountable to the customer, and then all the problems or issues that they have with that stuff falls on them. You can sleep a little easier. So like you know, whichever direction I'm going in, I'm always thinking about like what the cons are of this, and you know, is the grass going to be greener? And that, you know, it's never freaking greener.
Yes, I basically, I think, what was it, August 12th was 1 year of doing like things solo again, since I left that shop. And so I was doing a lot of job shop stuff pretty much right away. I mean, I ran a bunch of slingshots and I ran some of my own stuff pretty early on, but I got pretty heavy into doing Xometry work, tiered up through that whole system pretty quickly. And January, February, March was like busy nonstop with Xometry shit. And it was fun because you're not, even though you're still dealing with Xometry as a customer, you're really not dealing with anybody. You're not talking to anybody. You don't have to. I mean, you can if you want, but you're not dealing with any customers. You're still super busy and you're doing new shit all the time. So I was doing like a new job like every day or a few parts a day or every other day, whatever. But it was very fast paced, you know, so there's a lot of stuff coming in. There was a lot of stuff running and there was stuff going out. It was just this loop in the shop. It felt very productive and it was decent money. But it was nice because the cash flow was good and stuff was just constantly going out the door. So it felt legit, felt like, you know, a cool job shop. But it's exhausting. So doing like your own stuff, the payoff isn't, it's there for sure once you get going and you already have some stuff going. So like right now it's like, I'm going to probably end up overall spending probably 2 to 3 months working on all of this stuff, kind of off and on a little bit, but pretty much that's the only thing really that's running aside from slides, you know. So running for at least 2 months with not having any income, it gets really rough. But you know, hopefully the show goes as well as we're expecting. So I think
that's one of those things where it's rough. It's rough, but then once you get that first paycheck,
yeah, then I'm like, cool.
And your process is implemented,
yeah,
and you can just be returning it monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're good. You know, that first like, you know, 2 months with nothing, and then you get 15 G's. You know, and then honestly, like in all reality, let's see, if your blade cycle time is 30 minutes total, and your clip cycle time is 20 minutes total, and your frames, call them 3 hours. I mean, 4 hours a unit complete times, even if you just did 40-hour work week. Yeah. I mean, that's, what is it, 160? That's 40 or 50 knives you could do a month if you had the materials ready to go on like just like a standard work week. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see it happening everywhere. You know, there's so many guys right now that have dialed in the production process for their one model and are producing 10, 15, 20 knives a week. And like the market is huge because like we talked about on episode 1 or episode 2, availability is everything. Right now in a world of customs where everybody's books are closed and secondary prices are incredibly high, like the people that are winning are the guys that are just consistently releasing a product that's made well and like is available to the masses, you know, and that in and of itself is key. And like I said before, I tooted your horn. Most of these guys, while their product is solid, it's not innovative, it's not different, it's not anything beyond just standard, I would say. And my stuff falls into that, you know, situation too. It's just well executed, but nothing innovative. And then you look at what you're doing, and internal machining that's matching blade, bevel cuts and integrating backspacers and weird tiered level stuff. Like one thing that people aren't even going to know until they handle the Datum is how cool the pocket clip is, where it's almost flush with the frame and it doesn't protrude. Like that is such a cool feature, that I didn't appreciate until like I had made one, and just like how the thickness of the width of the knife doesn't even really change. Like that is such a nice, well thought out thing that like you don't see that often. So I'm excited for yours to get out into the world.
Nice, I'm stoked. Yeah, I tried to make it as low as profile as possible, but I'm usually wearing jeans and most of my pants, so I tried to leave like an 1/8 inch gap under it, so it's not really spreading on thick pants. So I couldn't get it all the way flush, and it's not contoured at all because I really wanted to try and make it almost just kind of go away when you look from the side. I mean, obviously you can see that harsh line right there, but the rest of it, you can't really see any of the rest of it because you can obviously with the light, but most of it just kind of hides. So, from each side, it's not super noticeable, but
no, it looks sweet.
I wanted it to be
man.
kind of a prominent feature on there. And I've never really been a huge fan of like really wide pocket clips, but it's kind of grown on me when I first modeled it. So it's cool. I'm worried that, so I did the inside, the first side of all the pocket clips. I showed you those a while ago. I did all of the internal stuff on all these. I still need to break them apart, but I ended up putting a chamfer all the way around it. You can see it in the photos that I posted, but I put a nice heavy chamfer around all the edges, so it's real soft. But then I remembered how stiff these pocket clips are, at least on these Best Tech ones. So I need to make them really thin. And
so now your chamfer's too big on the back, and you're going to interfere and have a knife edge between the two?
That, or I have to just make a really small edge break on the outside, which isn't a huge deal. Because it's really it's modeled only at like 10 thou anyways, so it's 10 or 15, so it's pretty small anyways. But when you have this wall thickness right here of only 30, 40 thou, and there's a 15 thou edge break on both sides, you're not going to have that much unless you
what would change that.
So I could relief the center of it or something too, and do kind of just a small relief in the middle. I don't want to set up the inside again, but I might need to do that to where I can still keep it somewhat thick. Yeah, chamfer everything and then do a relief like inside. So it's not all the way through. That's kind of
what I was thinking was like, although it changes the design aesthetic, but like you could almost put a pocket through it. You know what I mean? To like make.
That's true.
But it depends on if that doesn't really match the design aesthetic. It's kind of got a blockier aesthetic, and so that weird, But like you said, you could cut a relief just to decrease the tension a little bit. What's the thickness of your pocket clip by design? 45 thousandths?
I think it's like 40 or so, 40, 45. I could just measure it. So I have all this stuff open right now. If you want, I'll just share the screen and you can see some of this stuff.
Sure.
See how this works out. I don't know why Fusion does this. I don't know if this is a graphics card. If there's anybody that's listening or watching this and you have an idea of why the hell this is doing this, let me know. See if this opens up. For whatever reason, Fusion, the whole left side, it's completely white. The screen on my end is completely white, but it leaves this big black section on here. And it goes, it only is when the text is there, like when the tree's showing. So it's kind of strange, but
weird.
Yeah, so I'll just open this up and show this is the top. See some better light. So yeah, the frame design stuff is all done. So I've finished up all of this geometry in here. Getting the pencil toolpath to work on this surface all the way through was a nightmare. So the first one that I ran, I got it to work really well. And then I restarted Fusion because that authentication shit's going on. So every time my computer goes to sleep, I got to re-log in and everything.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I had to regenerate all my toolpaths and it wouldn't follow this toolpath. It wouldn't follow this fillet. So I literally spent like 2 hours messing with the damn settings on here. With the pencil toolpath, I had to modify the model a little bit. I had to modify all the settings, and I finally got it to work. That wasn't what I wanted. I finally got it to work pretty well, and I have so much shit going on here. So the pencil, it's just a big kind of. I had to do like a big lead in, lead out. So I didn't.
So pencil, I'm trying to think.
For this
you're fine, man. Pencil, if I'm thinking about it, I'm assuming that's like something similar to what Creo considers a cut line, where it has a 3D surface and you want to surface up and down it, but following like the trajectory of that surface, like around, a shape. So it'll like start at one end, follow what you're cutting, but step over equally and incrementally around the entire thing that you have selected. Is that how that functions, or what
Yeah,
is
kind of. So I have this modeled with a 16th radius, and pencil, if you use like an 1/8 ball with the 16th radius, it goes in there and it follows that modeled radius exactly. So before this, I'm doing a parallel toolpath on this to finish everything. So the parallel toolpath basically finishes all of this stuff. But when you get to sections mainly like this, where it's going up and down kind of a steeper surface, none of this is steep. There's a waterfall line right there. You can see.
Yeah.
So pencil comes back in and it just follows that radius, this blue line. It follows that radius, and it basically just cuts off all of those little waterfall lines, and you still have all the parallel on the other surfaces, but it breaks up that intersection right there. So it basically just follows right in that corner and cleans and crisps all that feature up. So
that's not what I was thinking.
Yes, but for whatever reason, I didn't matter how much I changed the model, how much I changed the settings. Like, I don't know if it's just, I don't know what the reason why it wouldn't do it. The very first one that I did, it worked perfect. This one didn't. It kept cutting short. So I had to put a big lead out on this to get most of the rest of it right there in that little corner where the green is. So there's like there's like a 250 thou lead out, and it still is kind of missing some of it.
Just at the very end. Yeah, you can see there's like a little triangle right there.
Yeah, but the nice thing though too is that this has already been surfaced from the parallel. So it is already kind of getting all that stuff. It just didn't get this specific radius all the way out. But at this scale, the scale is so small, you're never really going to see it, especially once it's all
on
blasted
the inside too.
It's on the inside. So I'm obsessing over like a lot of these little details in this stuff that I think most probably aren't going to notice. But again, I kind of want to come out swinging with all this stuff. So
100%, man. Yeah, that would actually, the pencil would be considered a trajectory toolpath for what Creo does. Just follows like a contour. It can move up and down in Z while following, an XY trajectory.
Nice.
Yeah, that's efficient for sure.
Yeah, it works out well. And then this is the lock side. Most of these toolpaths are all red because they're from like the old models that are. I killed a lot of the old model stuff. So this side too, I try to pack as much detail in here. Some of this geometry right here, where this surface comes all the way out on the other side that you could see. I guess I'll just open this thing back up. I keep closing all this to try and minimize some of this stuff. But yeah, if you look inside here, some of this surface comes all the way across. This was a detail that was inside the integral knife. I don't know how much this is going to zoom in on this. I think it will, but because it's screen sharing, it might prioritize the screen share. But anyways, I'm going to try and bring one of these with me too. This was the original knife that had, where's the camera? That had all of this stuff kind of closed up. This blade wasn't for this frame, so it doesn't actually close all the way yet, but I'm going to try and finish fitting everything. But this was the original integral knife that was TIG welded shut, and like, it has all of these same features in here. I basically just took this apart and kind of tried to remember how I modeled all this stuff, but there's an integrated over travel stop in this. So, which is actually this surfaced area on the lock side. It comes across, and then once the lock bar is cut through, I key cut the inside of this. So this surface actually overhangs the lock bar, and it's an integrated over travel stop. So it just, obviously you can't bend the lock bar out too far because there's material that's overhanging the lock bar from this surface.
Sure.
But looking inside this knife when it's open, it's kind of a cool feature. It looks nice. So I ended up adding it on here. So
yeah, it looks really nice.
I got to fine tune this surface a little bit. I just basically threw a big chamfer on there so that it's not just a square corner there. So the lock side is pretty much the pocket. I added this pocket. This whole thing is a mirror from the slab side. I modeled this first, and then I just deleted the lock bar. So the pivot pin in the back that's going to hold the pocket clip in place, or the pivot barrel, is what's going to hold this lock bar in place. And then location is going to be just tight in this pocket, and then tight in the pocket back here up until about 2.5 inches or so from the end of it. and then it's going to just get 5 or 10 thou thinner. So there's relief all around the rest of it. But I added this little dovetail in here. So, because I was talking about, I need it to actually kind of retain the pocket clip where the lock relief is. I think this is going to be too far for that, even though the pressure from the bend and everything is going to be pushing the lock bar down into this pocket. I still want to try and keep it somewhat rigid in there. So I put this dovetail in here. I modeled it at 32 degrees included because that's what I have in the mill right now for doing iron sights or backup sights on like lock slides. So, and it's the only one that I have that'll fit in here. I want to try to not make it too tight. I know if I made this shallower, it would probably hold it a little bit better than this really steep one. But again, it's what I got in there, and I'm just going to use what I have for this. I might actually end up just wiping it out if I can't get the lock bar in. So I need to basically install the lock bar by pressing down on it in this area here, where the mouse is, somewhere in this flat area, and then force the lock bar down to where it essentially snaps into this dovetail and then pushes back. So the fit doesn't have to be super tight because it's going to spring up out into that, or it's actually going to spring down away from it. But it should still hold it in place pretty well. And it's at least going to keep it from coming up. So we'll see how it works. I might have to put this back in some jaws and cut it out if I can't get the lock bar in, but that's the plan for now. I still need to model the actual insert lock, but
it also kind of targets the area where you want the bend to be, rather than just letting it bend however it wants from where it's bolted into the knife and retained back where the backspacer is. You've effectively moved the bend point forward probably 3/4 of an inch or something.
Yeah, that's exactly
where
what it is.
to a more targeted place, like where people like to have that lock. I was kind of concerned about that, because if you have that sandwich back there, I mean, that's probably like a 3.5-inch lock bar.
It's far,
from like where the bend point would be up to the lock. And you never know. I mean, I think it would make the lock like pretty spongy. You know what I mean?
That's what I'd be worried about. Yeah, it's 3.65.
And
holdable.
Yeah, see, I wasn't too far off on the digital eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I mean, I think that is a great move. And as long as it's machinable, reasonably machinable, I think that'll work really well.
This part should be real easy. I mean, it's all just from the top, so I'm going to just obviously hit it all from the first side, and then the dovetail tool is just going to come in. I just want to make sure that the dovetail tool doesn't touch this floor at all, just because they leave kind of shitty finish usually. This one from AB Tool might actually cut on center, or with the it should actually, because I cut the dovetails with it and I finished the floor. I'll just have to do like a vertical lead in so it doesn't gouge the floor when it plunges. Or I can just run it like a thou high or something and just plan for that. So yeah, that's the plan for this. That's actually next after I finish doing these. I might actually just jump to the internal side of this before I even finish all the outside stuff, because I can still sandwich everything together even if I do the blades. But yeah, we'll see. I got to figure out what I'm going to for sure do next, whether it's just going to be surface. Since most of this stuff is actually done on the outside, I might just dial in this tool path today while the mill's running, and then run out all the outside external stuff while I program the internal stuff for this. This setup's already done. All these tools are already in. It's the same jaws for the first side. It's just down on talons. So I'm going to just, probably do that. We were talking about doing checking pocket clip stuff. Right now I have this modeled. 40 thou is what it's modeled at right now. So some of my sweeps are gone. Just got rid of some of the sweep in the model. So it's supposed to sweep out like this. Luckily, it's already cut. I got to check and see why that. I don't know what's going on. Like, there's stuff in here where it's literally, I'm not even touching it. There's been so many updates recently where it's crapping out imported models. If I bring anything in and it's linked, even though nothing on this is linked, I got to see why that's doing that. I could probably, I'm in the manufacturing space, so I won't do anything. But anyways, that's pretty much what it's going to be like. So I still need to model the inset lock too. But yeah, we really only have like 2 weeks, little over 2 weeks, I think, because I'm leaving on the 16th at 6:45 in the morning. And I want to try to not be working late out here on the 15th.
Don't worry, you will be.
I probably will be, but Yeah, my buddy PJ, he hit me up yesterday. He's like, "Hey, if you want to borrow any of my sharpening stuff, let me know." He's like, "You don't have to buy any of that shit right now because I literally have nothing to sharpen knives right now. All my stuff is all dull. The pocket knife I've been carrying since best I've made up, I've never sharpened it.
Jeez.
So yeah, all my shit's all dull. You know, for being
Gotta step into being a real knife maker.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean it's gonna be tight. I mean, I think that you're figuring out the most complicated aspects to it now. Better to be doing that on the front end,
for sure.
Rather than trying to solve the world's problems with a day or two to go. Everything else after this is pretty standard. I do think you're probably going to run into some extra effort requirement during your tuning process with certainty.
Totally.
But again, there's no rule saying you have to bring every knife you're making. You know what I mean? If you are able to finish 5 or 6, pay for the trip, come back with 3 or 4 grand in your pocket, and then the following week finish the rest of them and sell them. Like, honestly, in some ways, to me, I would almost prefer to do that. Bring 6 with you, sell out, let them hit the world for a week, and then make the rest of them available to the world. That kind of helps drive your demand right now. And it kind of eliminates stress off of you from like, oh, I got to finish 15. I mean, dude, 15 knives is a lot.
It's a lot, especially
a lot
for me. Yeah, I mean the run that I did for Boost was only like 21. I think I made 21 total or something. The order was for 20, and like that was a lot of shit. I mean, that was when Paulo and Bobby and a bunch of people were at the shop, and like they were helping out with stuff too. And that was,
dude,
wasn't even a deadline.
Just sitting there and blasting 15 sets of frames sucks.
It sucks.
You know what I mean? Like blasting and blackening 15 sets of hardware, cutting 15 sets of screws. Like it just everything about it kind of blows, you know, and like trying to do those monotonous tasks at the very back end of a long prep. Like I just don't have any desire for that. And so like when I see these guys that are bringing all these knives, dude, hats off to them, because like by the time I finish 8 knives worth of shit, I am like done. Like I don't want to look at another knife for a few days, you know? And so to do something super repetitive like that week after week, it's just like, ugh.
It's a lot of work.
I guess that's why you hire guys, you know, or like Oz got his, you know, automated blasting, you know, his automated blaster with the tumbling thing. And, you know, I guess there are efficiencies you can put in place to like alleviate some of that monotony. But, I think if you just are realistic with it, you know, finish all your components so that if you do have something go awry, you can just grab another set of components without being stressed about it. Like,
totally,
definitely don't just finish 5 sets of parts. But, you know, and then if you get your process dialed in and you're like, okay, I'm bringing 6 to the show, but I finished like 2 days early, and you're like, I mean, I could probably throw a few more together.
Might as well,
you know, and like if you want to, but like just manage your expectations a little bit better than like pulling your hair out. That's the problem with like when you're really batching all of this stuff together. It's easy to run out of time, you know, when you're taking 15 knives worth of parts through each step. At some point you have to draw the line and say, okay, now I'm at 1 knife at a time. For me, that's like when all the components are machined, I size all the hardware for everything, I assemble them all essentially like where they're at when I ship them for Mac, and then from there I finish them out one at a time. I blast all their frames, color all their hardware, set their lockup and detent, and set them aside, where then all I have to do at the end is sharpen, you know. And so that way at least I know that every one that you have, okay, this is a knife that's going to the show, this is a knife that's going to the show. You know, even trying to finish 6 or 7 knives worth of stuff could still leave you in a pinch. So, I mean, it depends on how you want to spend your time, I guess, but I think that, you know, that'll be a good way to do it.
For sure. I think once I want to finish all machining on all the frames, because I can probably finish that within the next couple of days. Definitely by the end of this week, I should be done with both sides of both frames. Probably middle of the week, I think. But I mean, with how many hours I have into each one, it's probably going to take a little while. But luckily, I'm done with almost a quarter of it. So, yeah, I want to try and finish all the bulk machining on stuff, but then like you said, focus on stuff. I've been trying to get in the mindset of like being okay with just bringing a few of them if I need to, which I think is fine. I mean, the past few days I've been thinking about that. I'm like, I still have a lot of shit to do. Not because there's a lot of parts, but because there's so much new stuff. And like, I don't know what I'm going to run into when I try and stick this lock bar in here. Like I might put it in and it just sucks, you know, I have no idea. And then I'm not bringing anything. You know,
I would
at least I'm bringing,
almost,
I'm going to for sure at 100%, no question, I'm bringing a bunch of slingshots. So I'm going to for sure have stuff on the table, but I'm going to do everything I can to at least bring some knives. So goal is to
part
do all
of me,
15. But I mean, if
yeah.
I only bring 5, 6, whatever, that's cool. I haven't posted anything about this, but I'm going to try and make some frames at Ultim too. I have a bunch of this stuff.
Nice.
So that was part of the reason why I wanted to do an inset lock too. I don't want to cut lock bars. I don't want to mill that channel in there. It sucks. And I don't like doing them really wide. So if anything, I'm probably going to, if I did do it, I would go in there with like a 15 thou mill or something stupid and just take forever to cut through it. So doing with the inset lock, especially having it retained with no threads and all that through the rear pivot, making stuff out of, both frames out of Ultim, and then having, titanium lock bar insert in there, I think would be pretty cool. Then you see all the hard
if you're able,
and everything. And
two things. If you're able to dial in the surface footage and chip load for a 15 thousandths lock bar cut, make sure and send that over to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to spend the money breaking the tools figuring that out.
Dude, I have one. I have one actually that I used for, I don't remember. I forget what I used on the one. It might have been 30 thou, the one that I sent you. I mean, you've got it, but whatever I used on that one, it was a ball and mill with a really long length of cut. It was like a 10x or something on that. And I think I went through it like 5,000 RPM at like a 5 thou step down. And I just, walked
I can't even believe that 5,000 RPM was enough for a 30 thousandths diameter tool.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's not ideal for surface footage, but the machine maxed out at 6,000 RPM too. So that was always an issue. So I just tried to keep everything just fucking low.
The other side of that point that I was going to make is that if you bring some Ultim framed ones, I'm buying one. I'm sorry. Your customers may never see one of those knives. That one's coming back to Pennsylvania with me.
I cut up material for 3 of them.
Oh, yeah.
This is super thick shit. I hit up Joe because he was making a bunch of Ultim stuff, knuckles and little just pocket stuff. So
he was making the Justin Lundquist coffin things.
Yeah, so I think this was some rem from that. But I hit him up and he gave me like just a big rem of it. So I finally saw cut it up. It's got rems of whatever he was making on half the sheet.
Whatever.
So I got to face all that down. But it's super thick. But I just add a facing toolpath art in there and just knock it down. But it's the same setup, same tool. I'm just gonna run it exactly as I did with Ty and see how it looks. I've never cut Ultim before, so I don't know how much it's going to chip, if it does or not, or what. But
doesn't chip.
Cool. So I'm just going to run it.
It's easy to cut.
Feeds as Ty, see how it goes. I'm going to try and actually do that today. So because I'm going to be done with all the internal shit. So
you could push it way harder, but just to be safe,
I just don't want to mess with making another program with it. I'm just fucking.
It ain't worth it.
I'm counting
for the 20 minutes you'd save. Fuck those 20 minutes.
Yeah,
you'd be good.
I'm not making a lot
you
of
would save.
So. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make Ultim frames, and then I'll make a couple Ultim blades too. I think it'll work well.
No. Oh, sorry. There's the underside of my chin. Everybody stretching out over here.
Cool. So what do you?
Sounds like you got a good couple of days ahead of you. Yeah. What am I up to?
I think it's gonna be productive for sure. Yeah.
I tried like hell this whole episode to not talk over you, and in the last 5 minutes, I've done it 4 times. I just keep shitting the bed, dude.
That's all good, dude.
Trying hard.
I think we've got much better for sure.
No, for sure. It's a good exercise. It's actually been interesting because my wife will listen to the podcast and I don't. I listened to this last one was the first one I listened to, but she'll always critique me like that.
Yeah.
You need to do this or you need to do that, or you have some weird background noise or whatever the case may be. And I don't like constructive criticism when I don't ask for it, but I have actually appreciated her input with just the nuances of ways that we can improve, and it's been kind of a cool journey.
It's cool.
One, it's cool that she's listening. I never really expected her to take a ton of interest in what I do out here, but that was cool. But what am I doing today? Like I said, just tying up a bunch of loose ends out here. We're gonna run to the store. Got kids stuff. I have to open up some holes, pivot holes in some frames that are a couple thousandths undersized. And I have to cut 5 back spacers, and then all of the stuff, the residual max stuff for August will be finished. I shipped most of it 10 days ago, but I have 10 knives worth of parts over here that I need to get shipped out in the next day or two. And so I want to wrap those things up so that I can fully transition, like I said, the VF2 over to September Mac production. I'm only doing like 30 knives this month, just because a lot of guys have their stuff on hold, they're behind or whatever, and it worked out good for me to just not have to worry about doing their stuff this month because of the show. And then I'm transitioning this machine fully over to blanking out 3.2 subliner frames in composite materials or whatever. I have to actually, before then, I need to lay out. I have some transient blades over here that I just got back, stainless blades that I need to process soft from water jet. I need to blank out a couple of Damascus blades, and I actually have to get that stuff heat treated and out for surface grinding in the next couple of days, because I always try and focus on blade stuff first because it needs outside processing. And then I'm going to sit down, blank out frames. I actually sent a piece of 80 thousandths thick tie to my water jet guy last week. Unfortunately, it was like Tuesday I ordered it, and it's not even getting to him till today, unfortunately. Sure. But he has to cut me out like 50 subliner inserts because I'm out of subliner inserts for the 3.2s. So I'm going to try and get all the frame stuff done and the blade stuff done. I'll get that stuff back from him hopefully in the next few days. He'll have to ship it up to me, but he's thankfully close enough that it's just like a 1-day UPS shipment for ground. And then I'm pretty much, when I reflect back on how the Portland prep went, I had all the components finished and laid out like on a Friday, and I was able to finish all of the knives in like 4 working days, grinding them, applying finishes, edges, and everything. So I figure if I'm going to be leaving for the show on Saturday morning, that as long as I have all of the parts made by, what would that be? Like the 10th, like almost 2 weeks from now, if I can get everything made by then and I have like 5 to 6 days to finish the knives, I should have no problem finishing them. One, because I'm bringing less Damascus stuff, so it's mostly belt satin finishes off the grinder, which definitely makes it, I think I spent probably 15 hours finishing 3 Damascus blades on that last batch.
It takes so long.
Just hand rubbing everything out. It just takes forever, man. And like I'm etching and re-etching, so it's always remasking detent tracks and pivot holes and cleaning, then etching and then cleaning and redoing it and like waiting for that stuff to dry. It's just like a big time suck. Yeah, and I mean, I love the final aesthetic, but like, it's not something that I desire to do all the time. So I think because of that, it should that week of finishing everything should go pretty smoothly. Another thing that's cool is like I really am liking the way that carbon fiber stuff is coming off the machine. Like I'm doing 0 hand finishing on any of it. I'm just using diamond coated ball end mills for finishing with like a fine step over. Like I'm using a 3/8 diamond coated ball end mill, stepping over 7 thousandths to maintain like a 1/10 cusp height, and like with minimal stock on there, like the tool paths are not very evident at all, and like they come off the machine with the right chatoyance and like the right aesthetic, where I'm not rubbing them with sandpaper at all, no buffing or anything. Awesome. Which is very convenient.
That's cool. Yeah, that material's busy enough anyways to where even if you had a little bit, it would kind of hide it. So
yeah, it's not too brutal. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at this week. I hope that by the time that we talk next Monday, I'd like to have all of my blades out to heat treat or out to surface grind. And I would like to have every component blanked out, and I would like to be assembling knives, maybe still working on the insets, the lock inserts, depending on when they get back. But that would be my goal, is to have everything ready to start to finish in 1 week's time. So I guess we'll see if we can hold ourselves accountable to it.
Yeah. I still have to do, obviously, all the rest of the frame stuff, but I have to do all the hard milling on the blade still. I have to do op 2 on the pocket clips, and I have to do op 1 and 2 on the inset lock bars. So, and I still have to stock cut all that stuff too. So once now that this model's all done, I've got a stock size and I can cut all that stuff up. But yeah, so there's still quite a bit to do. And then all the finishing and sharpening and tuning and shit too. So I'm like, well, it's crunch time for sure.
No, you'll be good,
man. Even last week, it's like 3 weeks, man. It doesn't seem like a long time. I'm trying to finish at least all the machining for most of the stuff, like within the next week and a half. So see how it goes. We can have 2 weeks. At least have the bulk of this done by the next time we talk. So
I'd love to see. Obviously your pocket clip doesn't have to be finished, but I would love to see you finish the frames in the next couple of days.
For sure.
And then spend the next portion of time making the lock bars just so that you can prove out that they work. You know what I mean? Because the blades, hard milling sucks in a Haas, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it'll work.
You know, it's just that there's nothing about that that's going to be a problem. The question is going to be, does your lock bar design function? So I would almost want to like program and prove out one lock bar, not even run through all of them, just make one.
Yeah.
Then start running your blades, and then you can pull your first blade out of the machine and you can do an assembly while blades are running. And then if you have to tweak the lock bar, you can always go back and do that last after the blades are finished. But at least you're not figuring out that the lock bar doesn't work at the very end after everything else is done. Because, I mean, honestly, you could finish a blade, and say your blades probably take like 25 to 30 minutes to finish, I would guess, you know, with the amount of work that you have to do, chamfering and stuff like that. You could almost prove it out in the assembly, and then while the machine's running blades, do any redesign work that you need to do. So literally as soon as the blades are done running after a day or two, you can hit the ground running, reinventing the wheel on the lock bar if you need to. So
it's true. I'm going to try and machine the lock face at the same time I do the stop pin track and everything else, so it's all as consistent as possible. I don't want to grind them.
Absolutely accurate.
I'd rather spend an extra 10 minutes or whatever, even if that's what it takes to surface that lock bar or the lock face. It's not going to take that long, but even if it did, I'd rather do that in the machine, and when they come off, it's done, than stand at a grinder and fit that shit. I'm trying to minimize as much post-process on all the parts as possible. I'm not too concerned with tool life. I know it's going to suck, but I'd rather just do that than sit
It's really not going to suck.
Yeah.
It's tiny. You know what I mean?
There's not a lot of meat. There's not a lot of material there. I mean, I left a good little, tab on there, and it's really, there's not a lot of overhang of where it's going to engage. So really it's just kind of machining the lock face. Because I'm going to machine it, I'm thinking about doing a radius on there. Are you grinding flat faces, or are you doing radius?
I just switched back to flat.
Yeah.
I've done radius for the last few years. I think I could go back to radius now because I'm using the subliner. I don't know if we touched on this or not. I've talked about it, but maybe not on here.
Yeah, I kind of want to dig into some lock geometry stuff. Be cool because I'm at that point.
If I design a radial lock, if you think about what it is, when you're creating with the right arc segment at the right height, you're essentially creating a flat landing, a micro flat tangent section where that lock bar comes in. So it's not like how a traditional 8-degree lock with a lock face is. It's almost like you get an interference fit, and because of that, there's far less pressure that's forcing that lock, the lock back out on the blade versus when you get something like this, that wanting to ride up. But getting it to be perfect, I actually have the math written down somewhere around here. Wheel diameter for stock thickness, wheel diameter, and I actually sketched it all out. And on my lock face grinding jig, I actually got at my last job, I set a bunch of indicators up with my tooling arm, and I made sure indicating over the height of the small wheel that I was using, and then using like the digital height gauge to check from that known dimension on a gauge block stack up down to the surface that I was grinding the lock on, so that I could create like literally the exact conditions that I wanted for grinding that lock. And it worked phenomenally. The problem was with the transient, because of the way that the frame is laid out and how people would grip it, deployment was always a problem. People would always be putting pressure on the lock bar. They'd have a hard time firing the small flipper tab, and they would think that the detent was just really stiff, not thinking that they were interfering with how the lock bar was holding the blade in the closed position. So they would inherently push the lock bar over and remove some lock bar tension. Yeah. The problem with the radial lock is if you don't have the right amount of tension holding this condition, it will fail. It will kick that lock bar out and you'll have lock failure. And then I'll be getting messages that's like, man, my lock bar is failing on this transient. Like, what's going on with this? And I get it back and it's like, well, you took lock bar tension off of it. And so I got so sick of dealing with that I just went back to a flat lock face. Even though I think it's an inferior lock style, it has eliminated those problems because, the other problem with a radial lock is if you have a very small window for success. It's like 5% to 15%. If you get it over here, it'll just rock back and forth. If it hits that radius, it will, you can obviously then put a radius on the lock face on the lock bar and it will seat. But if it's a flat on a radius, it hits that and the blade just wants to rock back and forth. So as we're obviously with a flat lock, it'll just keep going over and over, and you get to 25, 30, 35%. It still functions the same as if it was 10% because it's just a lock face on a flat 8-degree angle. So it's been more forgiving. I've switched to that method, but now I look back and I'm like, man, now that I'm doing subliner everything where people can't manually take lock bar pressure off because it's set into the frame, I could go back and go back to my preferred lock geometry style. But I really don't want to set all the indicators back up and like try and produce that again here. So, I mean, it's subjective. It's on what you want to do. Certainly, it would be easier for you to just machine a flat 8-degree angle. And honestly, it's actually measurable then with your probe. You know what I mean? Come down to a certain point, you know exactly where it's at. Whereas on that arc, depending on how the ball or the bull nose corner is breaking down, like that could be different at any point along that arc as that weird radius is wearing, So
yeah, one thing I was thinking
I don't know what
too,
you want to do.
I know a lot of guys are doing that radius lock face, and it's actually almost kind of like some guys talk about it where it's almost a hollow, if the blade's flat in this, the blade's laying flat this way, and then so a lot of guys, or some guys I've read about, where it's actually hollow just a little bit. So where you actually have kind of a knife edge to where the lock bar is coming over, it's engaging in the radius, but then that knife edge is gripping it in place. You can still pop it out. Either it's either undercut slightly or it's just vertical right there. But also, if thought about too, you could just do like an 1/8 inch or an 8-degree angle that goes into a radius. So you're still actually engaging on an angle, but you're creating a radius to prevent over travel. So that's something too where I've thought about doing. I just need to figure out at what, where the center of that radius needs to be in relation to the face, the actual primary datum of the blade, which is the lock side of the blade. Because really the blade thickness doesn't mean shit, really. I mean, this could be 2 inches thick. You don't really care about that.
You only care about that
engaging.
top 30% is all you care about.
I mean, the only reason that would matter is if you're laying on the opposite side when you're grinding your lock face, because you're going up to that.
Yep, because it's changing the location on the 100%.
Exactly. But if you grind it upside down, I would be
concerned about is with that hollow, with the grip, the single point of contact almost locking it in place.
I'm probably not going to do that. So
that'll be perceived as lock stick for sure.
Totally.
And also, unless you're using a hardened steel lock insert, like you're gonna wear the hell out of that titanium face, even carbonized. It'll wear that carbonizing right off of there.
So I wanted to originally do this lock bar out of steel, and so we can heat treat it, harden it, and all that stuff. But I don't want to do the OP on it, outside process stuff, and I also don't want to try and press a ceramic ball into a hardened steel lock bar. And I don't want to put a titanium insert into a steel lock bar or a steel insert into a titanium insert lock. It's just, I don't want screws. I don't want any of that shit. So yeah, just making it out of titanium, like you were talking about, make it out of tie and then either carbonize it or just heat the shit out of it. And then I think if I machine that lock bar or the lock face, probably start with 8 degrees. Is anybody going 7 still, or is it all just pretty much 8 degrees now?
7.5 to 8 is what everybody's doing.
I think I always did mine at 7.5.
7 in a long time.
Yeah, because I think
just switched to 8.
Too much stick, right?
Yeah, it's just too much of an aggressive angle. It causes just wedges.
Yeah. You don't have any issues with that bar popping out at 8? I mean, I don't really see anybody doing stupid spine wax stuff anymore. It's not as prevalent anyways on people's pages, but
sometimes I can spine whack it out if I hit it hard enough. Mm-hmm. I think it's an awful metric for like measuring a lock's viability, because if you need something to not fail, if you need to be in a position to where that's going to be your metric, like use a fixed blade.
Totally.
My metric is with pressure and torquing with my hands, can I collapse the lock?
Yeah.
I can feel my lock bar flex because it's not super wide. I can feel it flexing, but I can't pop it out.
Nice.
And if I can pop it out, then I make adjustments. Like I still, for sure, when you're dialing it in, I can break it with my hands, but we get it to a point where we can't, And again, if there's failure from something like that, because another thing, like with my model specifically, this isn't true with the subliner version, but with a frame lock version, if you're doing a kind of downward cutting that like requires that kind of excess force, you're gripping that knife really firmly. You have to be, because you couldn't put that kind of effort into it otherwise. Well, with the way the transient is, the only way to hold the knife that way is you have to be pushing on the lock bar, because that's the only place to hold it. So you're inherently holding the lock in the closed position with force while you're doing any kind of aggressive cutting like that anyways. So I'm like, if you have failure, you're abusing it in a way that I can't recreate, you know?
Yeah, I don't think either of our knives are really for people to be beating on stuff and stabbing into trees and shit. So.
Yeah. You remember that old video, the heater video?
That's what I was thinking about.
Heater Nation.
Yeah, that was.
We stab our knives into trees. We use our shit.
Yeah.
But no, what you need to do is you need to make your hardened steel lock bars, but you need to machine an integrated detent ball into it so that you can just create that in any position that you want. You don't have to press it in. Come on, overkill,
dude,
man.
might as well, because it's thick enough anyways, because it's going to get thick where the there's going to be material there anyways, because it's thicker in the back where it has a sandwich in place. That's a fucking great idea, dude.
There you go, man.
All right, it's done. So these ones are going to be titanium with a ceramic ball in them, and then the cool thing about it though is they could just be swapped out. So if I ever do that, or these pocket clips are too thick and people that buy them are not stoked on it, I'll just swap them out later.
Everything is modular, man.
Yeah, and there's no threads on anything, so that's the best part. The web between the bearing pocket and the pivot head is really thin, though. I'm kind of concerned with that, but I think it'll be all right, because there's going to be a steel washer.
It'll be all right
it's
for
all
this.
Sandwiched and all that shit in there too. So again, people aren't going to be stabbing these into trees and using them as stairs, I hope. So
I mean, the nice thing is I've found you can get away with a thinner web on the handle that has less bearing surface on the pivot to barrel, because you're keeping your pivot head counterbore relatively tightly toleranced with minimal clearance. So while technically I guess your pivot barrel could rock with very minimal bearing surface in the frame, having that flat surface condition and no ability to shuck with the head prevents you from ever feeling any movement in the, of the pivot barrel in the frame itself.
Everything's completely constrained in here too. So
yep, it's not like the blade where you just have bearing contact, and if you have an oversized pivot, you can shuck it back and forth. You can't recreate that in the frame side of it at all.
It's way tight. It's a lot tighter in the frames with the pivot in there, especially tighter than the pivot's going to be in the blades on this. It's not enough. I don't think it's going to be enough for people to feel it or cause any issues with action. But like we talked about, the MagnaCut definitely grew in heat treat, and they were already pretty much on size. So moving forward, I'll probably leave them small, or we'll see if we continue to use MagnaCut. So cool. Yeah,
that's the difficult decision to make, right? Is that MagnaCut does have some downfalls in the manufacturing process from a performance perspective, and for the end user, it's phenomenal. Yeah. But if you have a hard time processing it and keeping it within the constraints of your process, and you're having to go above and beyond on everything you make to make that final product work, like at some point you got to, worry about your sanity. You know what I mean? It is certainly better in a lot of measurable areas, but are all of those measurable areas going to be utilized by every user? Is everybody going to be having to need the corrosion resistance that it provides, all the time? Or is somebody going to be using it for something that requires the impact toughness that it has? It's not like a knife that we're making is so purpose driven that it needs to check all those boxes in all those areas. Like a broadhead, it's great for that because it needs impact toughness as it's passing through an animal and hitting whatever's on the other side. So to have a stainless steel that's corrosion resistant in the elements, that backcountry hunting requires while being as impact tough as A2 or close to it, I can see that as a place where MagnaCut really shines for that application. But for a pocket knife, if you're not mistreating your knife or you're not working on a boat in the ocean, most of these other high-end stainless knife steels check all the boxes that the end user really needs. So that's kind of something I spent a while thinking, MagnaCut's the end all be all. It's all I'm ever going to use. It's the best knife steel ever made, blah, 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 blah. But as I've gone through some of the hiccups that I've had to, work through as I've worked through it on the machining side, it does have me questioning, do I want to try and pursue another steel? It's something I never thought I'd say, but I am finding myself in that position.
So far, this hasn't been too tough to deal with. I mean, knowing now that it grows that as much as it does in heat treat, I can just account for it. I'll have to just leave more stock around stuff and slot the pivot hole or the tab hole, which I've already done on these anyways. So I think we'll see how it goes on these first ones, and if everything works out nice, just keep going. But sucks XHP is gone. XHP was cool.
Yeah.
I really like that material.
I had an opportunity to buy when I was buying material for what was it for? When I was buying it for these last run of Mac knives in December of last year, I was buying MagnaCut from SB, and I saw on their clearance price list they had 4 sheets of XHP, 3/16 thick. The problem was they wanted, even though it was on their clearance list, they wanted like $1,800 a sheet for it, and MagnaCut's like $12.96 for the same stuff. And I was like, my people want MagnaCut, but I like actually hit up a friend that like likes XHP a lot and was like, hey, if you want to buy one of these sheets, like there are 4 available, and they're not, and by that time it had already been discontinued for 6 or 8 months. And I'm like looking back regretfully, like thinking to myself, like, did I fuck up by not buying at least one of those sheets of XHP for like my personal stuff? I guess I'll never know. Anyways, cool, man. Cool. Well, we've hit our mark. It's 1 hour and 10 minutes. Appreciate everybody hanging in this week.
Yeah, for sure.
As Ken and I are continuing to move through our show preparation stuff. And I'm really enjoying watching you and your process with moving through this knife. It's awesome to see it finally come to fruition. I've been waiting for you to do this for a long time, as I know a lot of people have. I'm very much looking forward to you getting it dialed on the Datum M so that you can start to make the Datum S.
Yeah,
because
S and
God knows I'd love to see a 3-inch bladed Datum would be the shit. I know a lot of people are going to love that, but
more L's again, like guys. You made too, yeah.
The L's are cool. The L's are big. 3.75-inch blade is a big blade, old boy.
Really fucking big. Yeah,
dude, it's big, man. That's when people that got those few knives would message me after they received them, like, damn, this son of a bitch is a lot bigger than I expected.
Here's the L. And the M, so it's quite a bit bigger.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited to.
I'll bring this. Yeah. I'll bring this one with me too.
You really should, man, because then I can take it home with me and I can fix all the stuff that needs fixed on.
No, it's cool. I like it. This thing's cool. So
sick, dude.
Sweet, man.
Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate the chat this week. I look forward to catching up with you in a week. I'm sure I'll talk to you before then, but as always, kill the week, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for keeping my head on straight, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. I'll be seeing you soon.
Later.